Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Forgotten Highlander. This is the incredible and somber story of a prisoner of war named Alistair Urquhart during the Second World War. I'd like to give a quick shout out to one of our channel viewers who made me aware of this book and brought it to my attention, and that is my brother Mike. So shouts out to you, Mike, and thank you for the book suggestion. This book is extremely difficult to read. It contains graphic depictions of the horrors, and I mean horrors, of war. The reality. Being a prisoner of war, the treatment they received, it's absolutely horrifying. And I think it's good that we don't forget our history and we bring to light these dark patches, as hard as they may be to talk about. I think it's important to bring them into the light. This book is a memoir of the life of Alistair Urquhart. He is a Scottish man born in Aberdeen, Scotland in 1919. The beginning of the book covers his early childhood, his growth to maturity, and his home life, and really kind of sheds light on the kind of person he is. He loves ballroom dancing. He loves going out to these dances and just a really quality person. He's over 90 years old at the time of writing, so you can totally tell that he's from another generation. Just the way he writes and the class that just emanates from him while you read his recollections. It's really beautiful. We find out soon enough that Alistair is called into service with the Gordon Highlanders. He's drafted as part of the British Army and he's sent to Singapore, where he's serving alongside other British soldiers, basically in defense of British interests in the Singapore region and the Southeast Asia region of the world. As Alistair settles down to defend these British interests in Singapore, the author really starts to relay his sense of foreboding, that the people he's serving with aren't the highest quality of soldiers. No one's really taking the defense seriously and the thought of an attack seriously. At one point, he suspects one of their office workers of actually being a spy for the Japanese army, the Empire of Japan. And he's starting to get creeped out, and you can tell that he may be one of the only ones feeling this way. He's worried that if an enemy does attack their positions, they're going to come through like a hot knife through butter. And sure enough, in 1942, Alistair's worst fears materialized during the Battle of Singapore, when the Empire of Japan's army crashes through the British defenses and all the survivors are rounded up and become prisoners of war of the Japanese army. It's at this point the book changes gears and Alistair takes a turn for the somber and serious and begins to relay the atrocities, the war crimes, the inhumane and almost unfathomable treatment that they received as prisoners of war in the Southeast Pacific region of World War II. It's almost unbelievable what these men went through. Where do you even begin to reflect on a book like this? It describes 3.5 years of being a POW, and it's 3.5 years of torture. I'll start with the nutrition. They're forced into servile labor, hard labor. And Alistair starts the war at 135 pounds. He ends the war at 82 pounds, a grown man. There are pictures in here. They look like they've been dragged out of a German concentration camp in the middle of the Nazi regime. It's like horrifying. The little that they do get to eat, it's white rice, it's unseasoned, unsalted, it's filled with maggots. The little water they do get makes them sick, gives them dysentery, causes them to die of infections. Everyone is undernutritioned. He's constantly writing about the theme of hunger throughout this book. He's daydreaming and having night dreams about food. You can't imagine. I mean, we talk about intermittent fasting today. You know, I'm going to go 18 hours without eating. These guys are on a caloric deficiency that we cannot fathom. And they're doing hard labor in the jungle in Southeast Asia. The next section covers the Hellfire Pass, which is a period of manual labor, using dynamite to blow their way through the jungle, building train trestles, train tracks. losing their lives in the process, either from the dynamite, from the beatings, or from sheer exhaustion. Those who didn't work hard enough, and by the way, they worked from dawn well into the night, only to sleep on the ground and repeat the process. Mosquitoes all night, throwing up. Unbelievable. If you were seen not working hard enough, they created these torture holes they dig into the ground where you could neither stand up, nor sit down, nor kneel, nor crouch, nor lay down. And they'd put you there for a week, for a month. A hot metal grate over the top. Keep in mind, you're in the jungle in Southeast Asia. Those who did survive, quite literally, went insane. Unbelievable. Here's a paradox for you. You know, in the first world, you often hear how people just can't believe in God because there's people out there who are suffering. What I've noticed is many times the people who are suffering and the people in the worst of conditions are those who end up actually believing in God. On page 160, we read, "I never believed in a divine entity, and I was especially skeptical since I was forced to go to the classes." He's talking about his youth with the Boy Scouts, learning about the Bible and learning about God. "Gradually, the more I suffered and the more evils I witnessed, the more I began to believe. I turned to God several times. Often I felt my prayers went unanswered, but I somehow lived through this madness, and I think that someone must have been listening." Interesting. There's just simply no way to do justice and bring to light all these atrocities over the course of this review. I will say it gets worse than the Hellfire Pass. That is not the worst of the torture, if you can believe it. At one point, they're stuffed into the brig of these giant cargo ships where they have no light, no food, no water. Thousands of men in the burning heat in the brig of a ship. Violence ensues, nowhere to move. People committing suicide, losing their minds, resorting to cannibalism. It's just, I've never read anything like it. They're shipped here and they're shipped there, and Alistair winds up outside of Nagasaki in another POW camp where the story takes a slight turn for the better as the United States Marine Corps liberates them and frees all the prisoners. Many of these Marine Corps soldiers are reduced to tears. United States Marines burst into tears when they see the shape of these men and what they had gone through. They've never seen anything like it. After being liberated, Alistair winds up being sent to the United States first, and then he winds up back in Scotland where he's greeted by his family and slowly tries to reintegrate back into society, obviously with immense post-traumatic stress, just war shock, coming back into a healthy weight even is difficult for him. He can't eat the foods that he used to. In fact, the only food he can really keep down is white rice, believe it or not. So you're just left with an immense amount of humility, respect, and just awe at how could someone make it through this. Like the human spirit, the candle couldn't be put out. Despite all the things that have happened to him, he writes, "My time as a prisoner of the Japanese helped shape and determine my path in life just as much as my childhood did. Like it or not, the horrors did happen to me and to thousands of others, yet some good has come out of it. My ordeal has made me a much more patient, caring person. Inspired by the devotion of our hard-pressed medics on the death railway, I was able to care for my young daughter when she was ill and for my late wife who required 24-hour attention in the last stages of her life. While in Japan and working with my friend, Dr. Mathiasen, I vowed to spend the rest of my life helping others, and I am pleased to say that I have done so. It is where my satisfaction comes from nowadays." Wow. What more can you add to that? Summarizing this book is an impossible task. There are life lessons to be learned. There's new appreciation for human life to be gained. There's justice that you bring to those who suffered by bringing this story to light and letting their story be told. It's just a range of emotions and a very, very somber and touching book. I would highly recommend reading this book. I would not recommend this book to children, but I think it deserves to be read and never forgotten. The Forgotten Highlander by Alistair Urquhart.